Whether that's the conference room table or the dinner table or even the craft room table, the whole point of our work is to empower you to feel like the best and highest side of you is getting out to the people who need you. And we do this work through a variety of means, including keynote talks and workshops, lots of virtual events and classes like this, especially over the past year, and even engaging panel discussions in a new way where we host panelists and their families on stage to talk about work-life integration and what it's all really like. We do this work across a diverse set of clients, including the nonprofit sector, the healthcare sector, the retail arena, in manufacturing and financial services. And almost everyone who comes to one of our programs says they would recommend it to someone else, which we take as one of our very highest honors. I'm Marty Bledsoe Post. I'm the founder and CEO of Apparently, and I am joined today by our fearless managing director, Teal Taylor.
Hey, everybody.
We are so excited to be able to have a chance to talk with you today, but it is really not just the two of us who make this work run. We have an entire coalition of strategic female leaders behind our work who help us investigate everything from voice of the employee insights to HR and DEI, to curriculum design and strategy to make sure that all of our solutions for working parents are as effective as possible. So we're excited to represent all of them as we bring you this work. And everything we do at Apparently is essentially grounded in perhaps a painful quote, but a famous one nonetheless, which is we expect people to work like they don't have children and raise children as if they don't work. In fact, it has never been harder or more cumbersome than it is in this day and age in this part of the world to try to sustain a career and raise a family at the same time. Essentially, the systems of support around us have not evolved past the beginning of the definition of the sort of nuclear American dream family after World War II and where the modern world is taking us. Essentially, we believe that you cannot meet the modern expectations of you as a parent, a leader, or a worker with this outdated support system around you. And that's where we come in to start to make things make more sense. In reality, school wasn't working for working parents even before what happened with the pandemic disruption. So why wasn't it working? Well, for a variety of reasons. One, the nuclear family had gotten busier and more isolated than ever before. So you start to see after World War II, lots and lots of individual families trying to solve for every single scenario on their own. So they're trying to solve for two parents working outside the home, or even the single parent breadwinner being gone to go to work, plus kids in more and more and more involved activities, plus expectations of parenting going up. And so the front of many of our refrigerators looks like this, or even more complicated than this. Perhaps you've got color-coded calendars in your phone, running it through several apps, trying to stay in touch with other parents and caregivers and extended family. It has been a very, very busy time for families trying to keep up. At the same time, what we know about school children is that 20% of them would be classified as neurodiverse, meaning they have some sort of difference in learning style that requires either a different approach at school, or it requires some additional support, potentially some conversations between a parent, a pediatrician, a school counselor, a teacher, a teacher's aide, an intervention specialist, to make sure that these kiddos are getting what they need from the mainstream education system, which is designed to fit basically the 80% of mainstream neurotypical learners. This is not to say that we have more neurodiverse kids now than ever. That is not actually the statistic at all. What we know now about neurodiverse learners, though, is evolving and expanding all the time. And so we're able to identify more of these children and intervene on their behalf. That absolutely raises the bar for many parents who are trying to make sure their child is successful at school and trying to coordinate all the additional bits and pieces that it takes to help that kiddo succeed. So another layer on top of what parents are already facing. In addition to that, prior to COVID, the average American public school calendar included 28 days out of school in the 9 months that the children were attending. So if you do that math really quick, you start to see that unless you have an extremely generous PTO policy, your kids are out of school more often than you have days off work to take to be with them. And that's assuming that you wanted to use all of your time off work to hang out with kids on not only holidays, but the random sort of in-service day, holiday Monday, holiday Friday, early dismissal, those kinds of interruptions into the calendar. So the school calendar has never been adjusted for the idea of working parents managing all of this. And so each family was isolated and overwhelmed before 2020. Coming into January of 2020, we were consistently hearing from working parents in workshops and online discussions that it's too much. I don't have the support I need. I don't know how to manage this all. I feel like it's just me. It must be my fault. We were reassuring them it wasn't their fault. And then we enter into the disrupted year that many of us look back on at the beginning of the spring of 2020 and realizing that really a lot of the gaps in the system were about to be exposed. Half of US workers were transitioned almost overnight to a work from home model. Many of the companies that transitioned to a work from home model had up until that point had no work from home policy in place, or they'd had sort of an outdated policy in place. And so they were not set up from an infrastructure standpoint to support their workforce moving into working from their kitchen tables, their hallways, their home offices, their bedrooms, the famous closet turned into an office, or the cloffice for a lot of parents where they were trying to get a moment of quiet to hear a call. We actually did see some pictures on social media of parents taking calls in the bathroom, trying to get that moment of reprieve. So huge transition from a workforce standpoint, but then you have to add on to that fact that 95% of our school kiddos were out 8 to 10 weeks early in the spring of 2020, and many of them did not go back for a full-time normal in-person school year last year either. So the bulk of students were experiencing some sort of hybrid or in-home learning solution. Many daycares were also closed. So this wasn't just a problem if you had children in kindergarten and above. 2020 essentially exposed all those gaps in our system when it came to what working families were dealing with. And prior to 2020, I have always maintained that August is this pivotal month in the year for working parents and working families. And it took me a while to really articulate what is going on in this 31-day span of time that makes it so complex. And so I decided to make a list, because when you look at this list all in one, you start to realize there is a lot going on. We're going to start on the right-hand side, actually. So do you have kids starting school, changing daycare? That could mean moving up to the next room at daycare, or returning to daycare. Are you resuming your commute or starting a commute that you've never had? Are you maybe returning from leave, having a new baby, or adding to your family? Are your kids starting a sport, changing their sport, getting ready for a fall sport? Are you attending or planning birthday parties? Somebody posted sort of jokingly on LinkedIn today that most of Generation Z seems to have been born in August and September, because all we do right now is go to birthday parties, right? Buying school supplies, getting them ready with school clothing and uniforms, sizing up in shoes and clothes and hand-me-downs and all of those things, and changing seasons of clothes, thanking your summer providers. I'm probably not the only mom who showed up at the last day of a summer camp last week and didn't have anything for the teachers, having totally forgotten that that was one of the things that is on my invisible list. So there's a lot going on in family life in August, but then you look at the left side, look at the things that tend to be going on this time of year for us at work. Potentially, you could be changing where you work. Perhaps you're moving away from your kitchen table and resuming that office setup. Maybe you're changing jobs or roles. There's a lot of shift going on in the job market right now. Maybe you're under the move up time of a promotion. Perhaps you're on the hook for filing quarterly results or getting ready for 2022 in an annual planning process. Like I said, there's been a lot of changeover in the job market. So you could be in a position of onboarding or hiring new staff. You yourself could be graduating or going back to school or getting new training. You could be starting to present results. Sometimes it's the time of year when we start to show culmination of projects, or you could be going through the whole idea of trying to update processes that perhaps align to all of these changes listed above. So August is a bit of a crucible for us at home and at work. And it's that overlap that can make it really overwhelming. A couple of years ago, I'm going to actually give you some foreshadowing here. A couple of years ago, somebody asked me for a networking coffee in August, and I looked at my calendar and I thought, there's just no way to pull this off. This month is full of extraordinary circumstances. So that's what we're hoping to help you with today with these tips. The good news is most of these tips have application at school, at home, at work, all of the above, if we can just think generally about how to apply these ideas. The first one has to do with choosing our words with care. This sounds like a simple idea, but the fact is that especially with kids, they have to understand what is happening around them. So with younger kids, this can look like very micro updates for them about what is going to be the same going forward into this new iteration of life and school and routine, and what is going to be different. The smaller the example, the better. So this looks like, reassuring them some things will be the same this year. You will still have a teacher. You will still have story time. You will still eat lunch at school every day. You will still get to play outside. Some things will be different. This will be a new teacher. You'll have on your new shoes in the bigger size and your new school clothes, and you'll carry your new school backpack. So some things are different, and really giving them concrete ways to grasp what is about to happen for them. And also acknowledging to them, it can be hard when things change. So for our littlest ones, this is really helpful. For our older kids, they're probably walking in with a big feeling of ambiguity right now. And as a parent, it's up to us to help them tolerate and adjust to that ambiguity. These tips are really not all that far different than what it takes to help managers and teams understand this is what is possible, this is what is happening for me, this is what I need or what we need as a group to better support. So starting from that place of the positive instead of starting from, I don't have, I can't do, I won't be able to, really instead of thinking about all the hours that you can't be at work, maybe you start to identify the core hours in the office that overlap with the rest of the team. So this is just a screenshot of a calendar with sort of core hours in the center of the day marked in rather than hours marked out, especially as we coordinate teams potentially doing partial returns or hybrid plans, or some of that overlap needing to be better understood. It can help everybody to start from this is what is possible and what is about to happen. The second one is about practicing early and often. So this mostly came from not only my personal experience starting middle school, but even some of the parents we talked to last week in a client session were talking about this notion of practicing. And it can be super helpful when kids and teams are picking up brand new systems and routines. So if your child is transitioning to, for example, using a locker for the first time, they're going to need a chance, whether it's at orientation or the night before school starts or something, to get in there and get their hands on and practice something new and different with this routine. We also had parents telling us that kids who are getting off the bus for the first time without an after-school program, they should practice getting home alone without you with their own key and getting in the door while you're still there next to them or near them. Maybe it's after dinner one night, so they can really get their hands on what does the lock feel like. When the lock is stuck, that doesn't mean I'm locked out. It means I have to turn harder. We have to get a chance for this hands-on practice, which helps our kids. And the same thing goes with our teams. Is there a way you can set up an option for your team to have a low risk chance to practice something new together, whether that's a meeting cadence or a new type of tool or something that they're being expected to do for the first time? The second thing has to do with, don't forget, day 2. So really the first day of school is so fun. It's so fun. If you even noticed last year when a lot of kids weren't going to school, what do? We take the first day picture, we have the little sign, we follow them to the bus stop. But honestly, it's day 2 when it sinks in that we have to keep doing this for 5 days a week for the rest of the year. It's why I've always said that Tuesdays are the hardest days of the week, because it's that clue of like, oh, I did that once and I can't rest, right? So for day 2, you need to have some energy preserved. This goes for you as a parent. It also goes for you as a team lead or a member of a team to understand that the first time we do something, there's that energy and that novelty and that change. But from there on, we're going to have to replicate and repeat. So what can you do to hold back and harness some energy for yourself and for your team for day 2? What can you do to make days 2 through 5 more interesting or better replicated back into that excitement and energy of the first day or the first time. If that's a good feeling, how can you build it out? So not forgetting that there's more coming. The third thing is to bring school to work. So it is absolutely time that we normalize including the first day of school into our work project planning. It is absolutely time that we normalize understanding that parents have additional obligations, and they are not just on Christmas and Thanksgiving and Hanukkah. They are on important days that hit the family calendar outside of what we think of the traditional sort of religious holiday schedule for family time. So if you have a project plan that is kicking off or integrating August, September, even December, January breaks, those things should be on the work project planning calendar, because it should be on people's radar that those days are going to be either PTO days, half days, flex days, work from home days, or days where you're trying to sort of pull a 2020 and do your meetings while you've got children back under the roof, right? So if we can start to normalize that calendar integration, it goes a long way toward building awareness at our work of what parents are going through at home. And hopefully it's the first step toward getting that school calendar to be adjusted. Because I personally believe if companies were inconvenienced a lot more by this school calendar, perhaps we could have a different conversation about year-round school or the timing of school hours or the number of days we're all out of school that would better benefit working parents. Just one of my future ideas. The other thing that we have talked about with our clients and working parents in our resource groups is how do you make a plan and make it visible? This is super, super important. It can feel a little bit like being a project manager in your own home. But let's face it, that's actually what many of us are in the first place as parents. So when we make a plan and make it visible, we're doing ourselves a favor, because our brains can literally process visuals 60,000 times faster than words. So that means instead of saying to everybody Sunday night at the dinner table, hey, we have a hectic week, you know, sports are starting and school is starting and I have this big meeting. Instead, we write it down, draw it out, put it in a place where everybody can access it. And this is not just a tip for lists. It's not just a tip for calendars. You can use this for all kinds of things. You can visualize feelings. You can write down or visualize the dinner plan for the week, or even one day ahead or 2 days ahead. I have found this greatly reduces anxiety in certain kids who need the predictability of, hey, the world is a little bit out of my control, but at least I know it's taco night, right? Silly holidays. At my house, we have a whiteboard in the dining room, big design concession on mom's part to have that take its place in the calendar or in the dining room in 2020. And I was really thinking this will be up for a couple of weeks until this, change subsides, and then I'll take it down. No, it's still there. It's everybody's favorite part of the house. But you can use it to have fun with your family too. So my kids like to look up silly holidays and put them on the daily calendar. Most often they involve a dessert, ice cream day, donut day, those kinds of things. But the bottom line is when you make a plan visible, it helps everybody grasp it and wrap their head around it. And the same goes with your team. So again, if you have team overlap that you need to communicate, it helps to show what you're talking about. The next tip is about rallying the troops. This is not all on you. Even if you're the mom, the nerve center of the household, and you feel like everything falls on you, it shouldn't. And I have 2 tips for you there. And these are both influencers you will want to look up and follow on your own accord. If you are married or have a parenting partner in the home, you will want to check out the book Fair Play by Eve Rodsky. She has really tackled the understanding of women's unpaid labor. We've seen it rise 153% during the pandemic. So it's not just your imagination. There is more than ever on your plate. But if we got our head around treating our home as our most important organization and got everybody on board, including and most especially our parenting partner or our other domestic leader, if we have that in our home, huge change can come about. This is not a blaming book. It's not a guilt book. It's actually a really fun read. And there's a game involved. It's called Fair Play because there is a card game that actually goes ahead and helps you break down domestic tasks between yourself and your partner. But don't forget, it shouldn't land on the 2 of you alone either, because depending on the age of your kids, it is possible to pull them into the game of taking care of the house as well. So in this case, you're going to want to look up and follow Melissa. She is online as the HR mom. Her mantra is to stop parenting and start leading these kids. And so her task list for her kids ranges, you'll see she shares in her social from little 7-year-old daughter all the way up to teens who are ready to fly the nest and go off to college, and how she has empowered them over the years to help her. 3 chores per day, then you can play. How much would it lighten your load if you had 21 chores being completed by each kid each week? That would go a really long way, even if it's something as simple as matching up socks. Unless you have a dryer like mine, which eats the other sock, and then you can't match socks. But the point is, even little chores can be shared with kids, and they can have an opportunity to jump into this with you. So you have to rally the troops, ideally before we get into these first crucial weeks. So this is a good time to start if you haven't already, sharing tasks. But any time is a good time to start in terms of bringing kids and partners into the unpaid labor of running a home. Perhaps my favorite tip, which is just say no, AKA nothing extra in August. Nothing extra in August. This is what I was sharing a little while ago about my friend wanted to catch up and have coffee, which is a great thing to do. I love catch-up coffees, especially now because I haven't seen so many people in so long. But here's the thing. August is not the time to take the extra coffee meeting. It is not the time to sign up, to volunteer for new things. It's very tempting. I understand whenever we're talking like a fresh start, a new school year, a new sport, the tendency is to want to say, oh yeah, call on me, I'll help you. Try really hard to resist that. Get yourself into a groove the first several weeks of school before you allow something new to make its way onto your calendar. So be fiercely protective of your time during the month of August, and see if that doesn't just let you breathe a little easier, that there's nothing extra going to hit your plate this month while you're managing all of this. Now, one last thought, which is taking care of your people. And I'm categorizing this as your people at home and your people at work, your team, the ones who look up to you everywhere you turn. Starts with taking care of yourself. I'm especially talking to the working moms with this one, but it doesn't actually go unheard for dads either. This is so important. This is the concept of radical self-care. And why do we refer to it that way? Well, not because I'm saying you do something radical. I am not saying that you take a week off and go to Hawaii right when school is beginning. I am saying the concept of putting yourself on the priority list can feel like a radical act for many parents. It can feel really selfish. It can feel like this is going to backfire, like this is actually going to cost me time in the end. I mean, there's a lot of resistance we can put up to the idea of placing ourselves on the priority list when we are used to not appearing there. So that's why we call it radical self-care. It's okay to think of it like that. It's okay to think, hey, sitting down and putting my feet up and having a cup of tea while everything is going on around me is a bit of a radical act. And that's okay. When they tell you on an airplane to put your own oxygen mask on first, they don't tell you, you actually have about 15 seconds to get that done. Which is why you don't want to be arguing with a child or potentially wrestling with an oxygen mask over here, because 15 seconds isn't much time. You have to help yourself catch your breath and be ready for what's coming. And that way you can help everybody else around you a little better and a little longer. So don't overlook this one. It's absolutely critical. And as part of that, do not underestimate the power of PTO, paid time off. If you have it at your disposal to use it freely, I highly recommend that you take off the first day of school. Only you know your schedule though. Maybe it would be better to take off the day before. Maybe you actually want to put the kids on the bus, post the fun selfies and the fun photos and the fun first day of school hashtags, go to work, and then take off the next day. Whatever it is that works best for you. You need to use your time off strategically if it's available to you in this sort of season of work. You have a couple of things. You need time to focus and get all the pieces pulled together for your family to make the transition. If you've transitioned a kid to a different room in daycare, if you've had a kid start a new grade or a new level of school, you understand that there's a lot going on with this. There's a lot of pieces, parts. So maybe that's what you need your time off for. maybe you need your time off for they get on that bus and you go home and have a mimosa and collapse for a little while. Maybe you need a spa day. Maybe you need a nap. Maybe you need just a day to catch your breath. And maybe you actually want some time to spend with them, 2 days before they go back. You want to do a one-on-one day. It's really up to you. The flavor of this is not to just zoom through, do what's expected of you at work, do what's expected of you at home, arrive at September 1st and be like, oh my gosh, I just started my kids in new grades and did XYZ at work, and I didn't really ever take a minute. So if you have PTO available to you, by all means, have the wherewithal to take it. And above all, don't be so hard on yourself. You're doing a great job. I mean, after all, the mom in ET had an alien living in her house for days and she didn't notice. So it's not as if you've reached that level of parenting or working, right? We are very thankful that you've had the opportunity to be with us for this. We hope that these tips have been helpful to you. You can find more information on all of this and how to interact with our team, and potentially even bring our team in to talk to your employer groups of parents at your office, or even your HR team or your leadership team. All the information you need is at a-parently.com/parents. So that's a-parently.com/parents. You can get information in there on all of our programs, how to get in touch with us, and whether it would be helpful to have our team come in and work with everyone at your organization. In the meantime, best of luck for the 3 weeks ahead of us as we pilot our way through August. We wish you all the best, and thank you very much for being here today.